Hello and welcome to episode 167 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. On the show today, I'll be joined by Victoria. You might know her from her Instagram and Twitter handle, He Calls Me PP. We have a lot of topics to discuss today, including Disney bounding, Tokyo Disneyland, Tiana's Bayou Adventure, everyone's favorite stylish scientist animatronic in Epcot, and an amusement park near where Victoria and I were both raised. Before we get started, there were a couple of quick notes to cover. As always, please make sure you're subscribed to the Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty YouTube channel. After a very busy, hectic, and sometimes downright awful March, I am getting back into the theme parks. It just takes 30 seconds to like, comment, and make sure that you are subscribed. Last week, Alicia Stella announced the return of the annual Park Stop Stop Hate fundraiser in 2024. It will really be picking up steam in June, and there will be a lot more information then, but you can already donate by going to give.thetrevorproject.org/parkstop. We have nothing to do with this fundraiser, but it's a really great cause, especially with everything happening in Florida right now. Also, Alicia's coverage of Epic Universe at Universal Orlando Resort has been fantastic, and this is a way to pay her back for that awesome coverage. April is Autism Awareness Month, which is a cause that is really close to our hearts here. As many of you know, I was diagnosed as being autistic fairly late in my life. I went to a very small Catholic elementary school back before teachers were really looking for the symptoms of autism. I am not blaming anyone for that. They didn't have the proper resources, and some forms of autism were just harder to spot at the time. Since I have gotten my diagnosis, however, it has made my life exponentially easier. There are a lot of situations I know to avoid now, and I've learned to be more accepting of some of my quirkier behaviors. My co-host Sarah Says, who has been a little too busy lately to do a lot of recording, also has a son with autism. The fact that we live in a world that is more aware of autism is going to help make his life so much better in so many ways. The fact that he has an amazing mom is also a big help, I'm sure. Finally, those of you who follow me on Twitter probably saw that my wonderful cat Lily passed away last month at the age of 16 and a half. This has been really tough for me. My wife Courtney adopted Lily at the age of 1 when a coworker found Lily on the side of the road. It was obvious that she had experienced a lot of hardship in that first year. She was very skittish around us, even when she was like 13 and 14. Courtney adopted our second cat, Cassie, who requires a lot more attention than Lily required. So Lily kind of became more of my cat. She would sit at my feet in my home recording studio while I edited podcasts, and before that, edited sportscasts for my old job. She didn't need a lot of attention, but she would cuddle when she could tell I was upset. When I think about the long and healthy life she lived after Courtney saved her, I can't help but feel proud. It was a miracle that she lasted that first year, and she was able to be spoiled and feel protected for more than 15 years. Just a quick story, when Courtney and I moved from Pennsylvania to Arizona, she had to start her new job 3 weeks before I was able to leave my old job. I was going to be able to work remotely from the Phoenix area, but we had to make all of those arrangements so that it would work smoothly. After that, I drove across the country with the last of our stuff. Well, Lily spent the entire 3 weeks in the closet in the bedroom in Arizona. Courtney tried to leave her food out in the living room, but would always end up giving in to Lily and putting it in front of her blanket. She would not budge. When I opened the door and called her name for the very first time in the new house, Lily came running out of the closet within the first minute. She didn't feel comfortable in that home until she knew I was going to be there. She immediately perched herself in front of the window to soak in the desert sun, and I will never forget how great that made me feel. If you are ready to make the lifelong commitment of adopting a cat, please make sure that you adopt a rescue cat. Of course, Same thing goes for dogs as well. They will let you know how much they appreciate it in their own ways. Now, let's get things started on the podcast. It's time to welcome Victoria. Thanks for being here, Victoria.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for even considering me.
So, I'm going to start off by maybe embarrassing you a little bit because I recently saw something on Twitter and I 100% agree with this. And
Okay.
as they start planning out the media availability for Tiana's Bayou Adventure,
Oh,
they have to give you an invite for this because your coverage has been just so amazing. We have seen the toxicity of this change from Splash Mountain to Tiana's Bayou Adventure. But one of the things that I like about the way you talk about it is not just talking about the controversy, but talking about why it's a good thing that we're moving forward. Like you're excited about it. And I like to see people be excited about it and not dealing with the Twitter garbage. So, how excited are you about the coming of Tiana's Bayou Adventure, especially as we keep seeing more and more about this ride?
oh my goodness. I think it's been almost 5 years or 4 years now since we first heard the announcement. I've been ready. I'm very excited. It doesn't seem like it's real that I'll be able to have that kind of representation. I feel like I got a taste of it when, The Little Mermaid came out last year, but I feel like this is just going to be such a big deal for a lot of people, and it's just gonna be nice to have a princess, but also a black princess have her own ride, and it's not really wrapped around like the male gaze or anything like that. It's really just about her and her dreams and helping her community and just in a positive manner. So I'm thrilled about it. I can't wait.
And the more we see of some of these little critters who are new, who are being
Yeah.
added to the ride, I'm so excited because I do think there are people who maybe didn't know anything about Song of the South who just like seeing cute little animals, and we're getting cuter animals as a part of this ride. And they're really doing a great job of making this something that is for a completely new generation.
Oh, I completely agree. I appreciate the fact that one, they're brand new, and two, that it really does fit the landscape of what a swamp or Louisiana Bayou would be. I love the storytelling behind them. I also read that this is like part one, so there's going to be more introduced as well. So, I mean, safe to say, I know there's merch. I will be buying all of it.
It was announced during the height of the pandemic. Like the parks were still closed when they made this announcement. And then I think everything reopened, and then we saw so many projects get canceled. And now to think that we are at the point where Guardians opened and then Tron opened, and now we're
Right.
starting to see Tiana's Bayou Adventure. Like they're definitely gearing up to get this open by the end of the year. What seemed like it was really slow building for a while, now I feel like we're actually starting to get these things, and it is really exciting.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Like it's just I feel like in a way, like people have to understand the climate at the time these things were announced as well. That is also a factor. As you mentioned, it happened during the pandemic, but this was also announced during the George Floyd protest as well. So I kind of already knew in my head they weren't going to cancel it because it would have looked bad, to be quite honest. But it's just nice to see that like they're putting time and effort into making these projects long lasting and relatable and sturdy and have good storytelling and creativity as well.
Yeah, I don't think it was going to be canceled. I do agree with you. That would have been a really bad look. But I think what worries us so much as we see some of these things not get canceled, but just get pushed back so far. And the ride was open for a while after the parks reopened, and then all of a sudden they actually did close it, and that's great. I'm lucky. My wife's lucky. When she was growing up, all the princesses looked like her, right? And
Right.
what is it like to finally not only have a princess like Tiana who looks like you and has some of the background that you have personally, but also is insanely popular. So it's not like Disney created a black princess and nobody liked it. Like, her story is insanely popular. So what is that like as far as representation? Because I can't relate to that, but you can let people know how important that is for you.
It's honestly unreal. Like I remember when the film first came out, like how big of a deal it was in my household. It was actually one of the last movies that my mother and I watched together. Like, as some people know, my mother passed away of cancer, and it was that year the film came out. So just, I remember how excited she was. Like, she was just so happy, so excited to see it. Like, but as far as representation, it's just, it definitely does something for your self-esteem for sure, especially when it's like a big company like Disney who has this generational impact. Like just today, I was with the children on nanny and we were watching The Lion King. Like that was one of the first, that was my first Disney movies, and they were in awe of it. So just to see the general, generational impact that it has on Black kids' self-esteem, just like for Black people, because in Black media generally back, especially in the early 80s, early 90s, even now you still see it. The only representation we really have is like drug dealing or like the stereotype of being ghetto or just anything that's really negative or puts on a stereotype. So this was one of the first big types of media representation that I can recall since like Susie Carmichael from Rugrats or Abigail Lincoln from Kids Next Door. Like it's a big deal to see that in a light of a big media corporate like that. So with that being said, it just affects this how how generations will move, how they will get into certain careers. I know like specifically because of certain initiatives in representation that we have of actual real people, there are more people, Black girls and boys getting into STEM, like things like that. Like I know a little girl, a Black little girl who got into cooking because of Tiana, and she's great at it. So, so it's just things like that. Representation is just so important because it makes a really positive impact on the future generations. So it's wonderful. It's good. It's nice that we're gonna have a legacy that's gonna do better and be better.
And even beyond the color of Tiana, I think one of my favorite parts about that movie is Prince Naveen, who is this layabout, actually has
Mhm.
to work for the princess. He has to give up his layabout life to be a part of her dream. And that's just such a juxtaposition from some of the earlier princesses that I think it is an amazing story. It's why he's like my favorite prince, because not only did he go out, he didn't have to save the princess. He actually
Right.
had to work to make that relationship with the princess succeed, and now he's supporting her dream, and that's just awesome. Like when you talk about inspiring the young girl that you know who now wants to cook because of Tiana, and now she sees that her dream of cooking is just as important if she were to, date a boy at some point, that their dreams are both equally as important.
Oh, exactly, exactly right. And I think that builds on good foundations for positive relationships as well, because that's how me and my boyfriend are. Like we are a team. So like, sacrifices what we made on both sides, but we both support each other's green. I mean green no matter what. So yeah, it's just like it's a nice little representation of Black love as well.
So then you mentioned STEM, and I wasn't going to bring this up with you, but back during Black History Month, you did a lot of research into the female scientist at the end of Spaceship Earth and the
Yeah.
real life person who was the basis for that very stylish scientist at the end of that ride. And I've mentioned this before to you. My wife is a scientist, so she was always inspired by that image at the end. But being a woman of color as well is insanely important, but also very historically accurate and something that has sort of been whitewashed out of the history books. And now we're starting to see that come back, and people are starting to note people like the scientist you researched.
Yes. Well, it was funny how that came about. So, I mean, years ago when I lived in Florida, I actually did my not so scary costume based off of that. So I just happened to be in, funny enough, like I actually grew up very close to the school where she got her degree. So I was just talking to a friend of mine who graduated from Morgan, and I it just happened to come up, and I was like, "There's no way this is the same person." And she went to this particular school, who did this particular work, and it was just incredible. I've been trying to find a way to actually contact her because she still lives here. I can't find any really good contact information. But yeah, I felt that was just important to share. I wasn't gonna do like a whole to do about it, but like you said, like it's now all this information as far as STEM and Black women are coming back to light, and I was just like, she is owed the fact that the people in the Diz community should know her name at the very least. Like, yes, she's stylish. She's a Black woman in STEM, but people should know the work she's done and the work she's contributed to STEM, and people should just know her name. So I'm glad it took off the way it did.
And what was her name again?
Her name was Valerie Palmer.
Excellent. So if anybody knows how Victoria can get a hold of her, contact
Yes,
either one of
please.
us on Twitter and we will make sure that happens, because that would be incredible. You brought up not living in Florida anymore. You live now more in the mid Atlantic region of the United States, and you are within driving distance of a theme park where I spent a lot of time when I was a kid, because I grew
Yeah.
up in southeastern Pennsylvania, and that's Hersheypark. And
Yeah.
we talk a lot about the Disney parks, we talk about Universal, but really, Hersheypark is a fantastic park that
Absolutely.
is in an area that gets a lot of traffic because people either are visiting Philadelphia, they might be visiting Baltimore. It's sort of within driving distance of all of those big cities. So, why don't you talk about why you love this park so much and some of the things it has to offer that you might not even be able to get at somewhere like Disney or Universal?
Similar to you, growing up, my family would go to Hershey during the summer all the time. It would be like Hershey, King's Dominion, those parks. But we would mainly just go to Hershey because it's closer to King's Dominion. But I personally love Hersheypark because it has a local vibe, but it still gives. I'm trying to figure out how to explain it, but it has a local vibe, but it's perfect for everyone. Like there's something there for everyone. Like there is plenty of stuff to do for families with little kids. But if you're like me and my boyfriend who just wants to get on the coasters, eat some food, like they have top tier coasters. And I think what sets them apart is the fact that it's their brand. Like they're not afraid to do like silly or kooky things, especially with their characters. Like that's one of my favorite things to do is to like just meet the characters. People are like, they're kind of creepy. I'm like, no, they're funny. But ultimately, I think they care about their brand. They care about their coasters. They care about feedback from their guests, especially, which is why I enjoy particularly going to them. And I feel like that is a big part of what makes them stand out. Like I've done surveys, and then like the following season, I see that change being made. So it's just things like that. It's just fun for everyone. They're not afraid to try new things.
And one of the things, like, if you go to Disney a lot, and yeah, there are thrill rides at Disney, but nothing compared to what you'll get at Hersheypark. And Hersheypark has roller coasters linking inside of other roller coasters. Like,
Oh yeah.
they use their land so well. They will cram so many rides into these places. I know the one that I didn't get the chance to experience the last time I was there in 2022, because they were still getting ready to open it a couple weeks later, but it looked amazing, was the new Jolly Rancher ride.
That was the first year we became pass holders. Yeah, we went to the preview for that.
So, what is that ride like? Describe it to somebody who has never experienced it.
It's essentially a boomerang coaster. I'm not sure if people are familiar with that, but basically a boomerang coaster is one that starts at one end and in between it has like kind of like twists and loops and such, however way they see fit to make it. And then they'll go to a different end and they'll just do it backwards and then that's the ride. So that's a boomerang coaster. But it used to be, I cannot think of the name of it right now, but they revamped that area to be Jolly Rancher themed. So there's a smell tunnel in the middle of it, and when you go through it, you basically are getting a randomized Jolly Rancher flavor. And when you go through it, you smell it. Now during the holidays, I think Halloween it's pumpkin, and then for Christmas time it's like peppermint. But I don't think they did the peppermint last year. But yeah, that's Jolly Rancher remix.
And see, that's one of those cool things that they do. Like, they do focus on the theming a lot there, where you're going to get these different smells. If there's one area where Hershey Park excels, it's the smells, because they want you
Oh
smelling
yeah.
chocolate all the time. I know that as a kid, growing up in the area, we used to do Hershey's Chocolate World, which is a free
Yeah.
ride. We used to do
Hmm.
that for field trips all of the time. I just find so much nostalgia going through that ride, even though it has changed drastically since I was a kid.
It has. It has. I mean, it can use a little bit of an update. I'm not gonna lie to you, but I mean, as long as my boy Cupcake the cow is still in there, I'm good.
So, have you eaten in that new fancy restaurant there? Because I have heard really good things about it, but the
I
last time
have.
I was there, it was Easter and it was packed for reservations. So, why don't you talk about that restaurant? Because this looks incredible.
Yes, so I actually did a review, like a written review and a video review of this restaurant. So the restaurant is the Chocolatier. It's located in the Hershey Supply Co building, which is outside of the park gate entrance. So you don't need a ticket or anything to go to this restaurant, just a reservation. It's at the second level. It features like it's based on old Hershey, so you'll find themes and even props from like old ride vehicles within the thing, or you'll be dining in them. So they have like the old comet cars. They have like these little appetizers too that are like shaped. They put them on the Ferris wheel, like the famous Hershey Park wheel, and there's like little sampler there and stuff. They have specialty cocktails and alcoholic drinks based on certain desserts and stuff. If you're like my boyfriend and you can't stand chocolate, not everything in the dishes or the drinks have chocolate in them, so you can eat them. You just have to ask, or you can look at the menu and it tells you which ones don't have it. But I've gone for the Halloween and Christmas meals, and I've gone for two meals personally, and I haven't had anything there that has missed yet, especially the drinks. So,
No, that's awesome, because I feel like that restaurant was Hershey Park taking another step up towards some of those higher echelon parks with theming and increasing the fine dining, because there's some good food throughout Hershey Park, but this is really a sit down restaurant that is very much in that style of sit down restaurants at Disney, Universal, and some of those other parks.
oh yes, I would definitely describe it like that. It would, especially during like the middle of the day or like towards the end of the day, it's really nice to just sit down and have a good meal before you go. You actually get a great view of Candymonium if you eat outside. So you can just see it just going by or like a little carousel. And they have like a nice little lounge outside too. But it's really on I'm trying to think of what I can compare it to as far as a theme park restaurant. I mean, the closest I can think of is maybe Mythos at Universal. As
Okay,
far as
yeah,
like
yeah.
theme, that's what I would compare it
That's pretty high praise, actually.
to.
And before we change topics from Hershey Park, this is just as a sports nerd in addition to a theme park nerd. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but they still have Hershey Park Arena, which doesn't host anything anymore, but it is in existence. It still stands, which is the arena where Wilt Chamberlain had his 100-point game,
Oh.
which a lot of people do not know. They were so struggling for fans at the time that they actually tried to promote themselves out into central Pennsylvania. So they played a couple home games in Hershey.
Mhm.
And one of those nights was when Will Chamberlain scored his 100-point game. So if you've seen that famous picture of him holding up the paper with 100, that is where that happened.
Oh. Wow, I didn't know that. Well, the more you know.
Yeah, hey, listen, you talk to sports nerds and we have lots of useless information. So, another thing that I'm interested in, because I follow a lot of people on social media who do this very well, and you are one of them, is the Disney bounding and the coming up with outfits. And I'm
Ah.
always so interested in this because the amount of creativity it takes. How long do you have to think when you're creating these outfits? Like, if you're planning a trip, do you
Mhm.
have to sit down and you're like, I have to get my outfit for every day, or is it a little more spontaneous than that?
It depends on the occasion. So, and it also depends on the trip. So, I know I can even use the trip coming up for an example, like Dapper Days coming up. So, sometimes I'm fortunate where I can like work with a brand and they'll provide something for me. But usually I'm sitting there writing it down, coming up with ideas, brainstorming, and then I'm like trying to figure out what park I'm going to be at what certain day, what'll be easier to change out of because I don't stay in those outfits all day. I'm usually like take these photos and then I'm changing into some shorts and a t-shirt. But then it's like my Tokyo trip that's coming up. Have no idea what to wear.
Yeah, you have a Tokyo trip coming and you are doing the research on that right now. I have always wanted to, and I'm sure this is part of your reason. I want to see Tokyo Disney Sea because this theme park looks so next level. I have not talked to anybody who's ever said it isn't one of their two favorite theme parks they've ever been to if they've attended it. So, what are your plans going into this? Because I'm sure there's going to be a huge culture shock between the language, some of the
Yeah.
rules, like some of the picture taking rules that they have there, even. So, how are you sort of researching hitting these parks you've never attended before?
Well, I'm fortunate because this trip was originally supposed to happen in 2020. So I already had the research ready, but then the pandemic happened. So I've just basically been sitting on research. It was just a matter of updating it for this year. I'm very grateful for the TDR Explorer guidebooks. They are a lifesaver. Like literally, it breaks everything down to a T, which is perfect for me because I'm a Virgo. I need everything. I literally need a backup from the backup. A lot of YouTube, mainly TikTok, has been the best education for me as far as like planning Disney, Tokyo Disney, everything like that. My plans for the park. Originally in 2020, it was different because Fantasy Springs wasn't open, but now Fantasy Springs is going to be open. So we had to throw out that whole plan. So our main goal is Fantasy Springs. Once we get Fantasy Springs out the way, then we're just gonna do Disney Premier Access pretty much everything. But it's been a learning curve for sure. I think I'm gonna be okay. But yeah, Fantasy Springs is just gonna be a monster. Universal was even more of a monster because it's in Osaka. I don't really see many people doing videos or anything about it. So that one's been a little more challenging, but again, me being how I am, I dig. I literally dig for research, so I feel like I'm gonna be okay there too. My plan, I just really need to figure out what seasonal events are gonna be happening because at Universal Studios Japan, they sometimes have like anime tie-ins like Demon Slayer or My Hero Academia, things like that. So that's just really my main thing, and then everything else is just gonna fall into place.
So, how long are you going to be gone?
Well, I'm gonna be there 10 days.
Wow. Okay. So, you're going to get to see a lot then.
Yes, yes. I'm very excited because it's not just the parks too. It's gonna be like Osaka itself and Tokyo, and not everyone knows it, but I'm actually really into anime too. That was my main reason for when I planned this years ago to go, because I was like, I need to go to Akihabara and I need to get all the anime stuff. I need to see the Gundam statue, all that stuff. And then I got into the Disney fandom. I was like, oh, there's a Tokyo Disney. That's great. So I have my itinerary. I actually got to book some stuff in like 2 hours. So
And all of this research that Victoria puts into her own trips is just really great practice because she is also a travel agent. I started this show back when I was one, and I'll tell you what, it is hard and it is a lot of work. So
yeah.
if you ever find somebody like Victoria, you like her content, if you want to find a way to support her, get in contact with her. Have her put this research to your next Disney vacation or Universal vacation, and you will help her. She'll get a percentage of that. So, Victoria, if somebody's wanting to A, see more of your content, and B, connect with you because they want you to plan their next trip, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, there's like three ways you can get in touch with me. So first, you can just shoot me a DM like on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok. Like I'm chronically on my phone, so I will answer in within at least a day. Or you can go to academytravel.com, and when you're putting in your quote request, just ask for Victoria W. And as long as you say TikTok or Instagram or anything like that, they'll know who to send it to. Or you can just email me directly, and it's victoria.wade@academytravel.com.
And if people want to see your content, what are your handles on Instagram and on Twitter?
Oh, that's very easy because it's generally the same variation of everything. So the full thing is long as heck, and I'm so sorry. It's he calls me Pineapple Princess. So that's on Instagram. It's he calls me PP on Twitter. So it's just shortened. TikTok, it's Pineapple Princess 340. So it's really just some variation of Pineapple Princess. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
So I got onto Diz Twitter, if you want to call it that, in the
Mhm.
very beginning of 2019, and your content was you were one of the first pages that I really started to follow, and I really started to appreciate your content. So having you on the show is actually a really big deal for me. So thank you
Oh,
so much for being here. This was such a fun conversation, and I hope you have a great time in Japan.
it was nice talking with you too.
This has been episode 167 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. We will be back next Thursday with another brand new episode. Until then, have a great week.